All right, good morning, everybody. As we usually do, we want to go to the calendar and market watch. If you look at Thinkorswim and try to visualize it from different layers of menus, you got the first layer across the top, it's market watch. The second layer, calendar. When you open it up, if you've never really been in here before, this is often what it looks like. And that's just an absolute mess. So the easiest way to get it cleaned up so we can see what you're looking for is uncheck the show all menu and then turn on Econo Day event. Now Thinkorswim offers you an explanation of what this thing is. When you click on it, you can see this little pop-up, but they didn't write this pop-up. It comes from a website called Econo Day event. So if you're trying to learn more about economics, maybe, be a little basement economist, that's a really great place to go to. It's such a great place to go to. It's where Thinkorswim goes, right? That's where they go to get their information to display for you what this is and when we expect it to happen and what kind of effects we could expect from it, right? So you can also rearrange your display. This way you have the name of what it is you're looking at next to the time that it's supposed to happen. We've got a busy schedule today. 8:15, 8:30, 9:45, 10, 10:30, 2:30. These are really important, and it's not just because of the full schedule, it's what's on the schedule. We have an FOMC press conference today. This is where we are expecting them to announce some form of a taper. It's not the taper, honestly, that is what everybody is concerned about. It's what comes after they say that they are done tapering. But that's a can to kick down the road for another time. For right now, we're just going to focus on today and the idea that at 2:30, you're not going to want to be in the market. You're going to want, and in fact, that by 2 o'clock, you're not going to want to be in the market. You're going to want to be on the sidelines letting this unfold. It is very likely that today we're going to have a sideways day, that we really won't do much of anything, and that makes perfect sense, right? If you think about it, institutions are going to get into the market with millions and millions of dollars, and they don't want to commit to anything until they get some forward guidance here, right? A lot of times we're just swinging in the dark because we don't have guidance. But when you know that you're going to have an opportunity for guidance, why wouldn't you wait, right? So of course they're waiting. We're looking for their capital rotation. They're not going to rotate until they get the information. So we're all just going to be kind of sitting here waiting. Now, I do know traders who just entirely don't trade during Fed week. I think that's a little extreme. I think it's short-sighted and it misses the bigger picture. Of course, there's things we can trade, but be careful around 2 o'clock today, right? And be careful with the things that you're trading today. Have a very large expectation that you're really not going to get very much, right? Lower your targets, take profits quicker. And when it comes time to the FOMC meeting, just get the heck out and stand aside. If you can find a way to participate very cheap, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with like some YOLO calls. For you old people who don't know what I just said, it's an you only live once kind of trade, where you kind of go out of the money and you throw something on there. And it's kind of like walking into a gas station and buying a scratch lottery ticket. You know that you have no chance in hell, and yet we all do it. So you could go in and maybe buy a $5 or a $10 lottery ticket. If you're wrong, you're going to lose your $5 or your $10. It's not going to keep you up at night. It won't break the bank. You see what I mean here? These options are going to expire today. We're looking at, $8, $10, $15. Hey, if things get out of control today, we could very easily move down to the 455. right? We could very easily do that. It's got an expected move today of $2.73, and that's just, the 70% accuracy range. It could very easily go beyond a 1 standard deviation. 455 is not out of line. That's 6 strikes away. If we were to count 6 strikes away and ask, well, what would it be worth if it did fall that far? What you spent $14 for, you could sell for around $1.07, or maybe even for $1.50. You can see how it's 5 to 1, right? 6 to 1. I don't know. It's a lot. So, same thing on the other side. You're talking about buying a $10 call. We could very, very easily make a 5.5 strike move. What you spent $10 on, you could sell for $100, maybe $170. And if you're wrong, it'll expire and it will be worthless, and you will lose your $10 or your $20. And I bet that it won't matter even a little bit. Right? So for today, let's just go ahead and get back on track. Sorry, seen a squirrel, something shiny. Red line is Globex high. Green line is Globex low. That is very likely to be our range today. If it does get out of the boundaries, yesterday's high is likely to be our high today until at least 2 o'clock. For the downside, that floor pivot, that would be my target to the downside, honestly. It's a missed daily pivot right now. We have not touched it. When we have a missed daily pivot, we expect to hit it. It actually has validity to it when we don't hit it. It is a strategy called an MDP, a missed daily pivot. So right now it is a missed pivot. Daily pivots are hit more than 80% of the time. I believe the number is like 85. So, it's only like a 15% of the time where we don't hit a daily pivot. And I expect to hit this today. So for a move to the downside, we would break Globex low, tag the floor pivot, and I would be using yesterday's intraday low. It lines up with this green cloud down here. This green cloud is the 5-period daily moving average and the 10-period daily moving average. I turned it into a cloud because if you start to get too many lines on the chart, all those lines just tend to blur together, and then you just got a bunch of junk. But I know that in between this cloud is the 5 and the 10. And if the cloud is red, then the 10 is above the 5. If the cloud is green, then the 5 is above the 10. Simple and easy, right? So that 5-period daily moving average is going to line up very, very nicely with yesterday's intraday low. A break to the downside, if we manage to get through the floor pivot, would be that low. Beyond that, then we'll look at the previous week's close and 0.5% to the downside. And then beyond that, it would be yesterday's lowest point. Not just the Globex low, but the entire low, right? The entire day of yesterday. That'll be our downward target. If things get really out of control, which I really don't expect to happen, that 1% is going to be our line in the sand. That's where we're headed. And before we hit that, we would, of course, hit this low. So one more pivot to deal with, right? For an upside move, we would have to get through the Globex high, the high of yesterday, and then we would be dealing with, get this floor pivot out of the way, a 0.5% move to the upside, and then the expected move top. The 1% would not be my target. The expected move top would be my target. We're only going to see this after the report. Between now and 2 o'clock, I really believe that yesterday's high and this floor pivot is going to be our trading range until 2 o'clock. As I usually say when I'm approaching the market from this point of view, prove me wrong, and then let the market proceed to prove me wrong. It's done it before. All right, for the NASDAQ, we've peaked outside the top. I really think this is the as far as the NASDAQ is going to go up until the FOMC meeting. But I say that, and then there is the bonds and the dollar. You can see that the dollar is getting ready to break this ledge to the downside. Should we start to see an extreme move in the dollar, it is very likely that we could see an extreme move in the NASDAQ. Same thing with the bonds. The S&P is going to be more reacted upon by the FOMC, and the NASDAQ is going to be more reacted upon by the dollar and the bonds today. That's not always the case. Don't put it in your pocket and think that that's forever and ever. For today, that's the way it's going to play out. So a move in the bonds or a move in the dollar is going to affect the NASDAQ quite a bit. It's not really going to shake, rattle, and roll in the ES. The ES is still going to stay on the sidelines looking for that FOMC report. We are getting consistently higher highs and higher lows, or you could say equal highs and higher lows. We are testing theory against the top of this range. Personally, I don't think we're getting out of it, right? We could wick up again. We could continue to do this little wicking maneuver, but not looking for new highs. Looking for this to maintain that range. Globex high to floor pivot low. Same as the ES. If the bonds or the dollar do get out of control, then we'll be aiming for the expected move top. That's unlikely. Or previous week close. That's more likely. That is a lot more likely. Right? A break to the downside through that floor pivot. We will deal with yesterday's low, which ties in real nicely to this price ledge back here. That is a very, very solid line in the sand right there. That'd be 15,900. Below that, 0.5%, and then previous week's low. I don't expect to see a 1% move to the downside in the NASDAQ unless things just, like I said, get really, really bad. If they do, it won't be a surprise. You'll see it everywhere. It'll be in the tick, trend, AD, market breadth, sectors. It'll be across the board and across the globe. You'll know it. For the bonds, you can see that we have been maintaining this range now for 1 week, from Wednesday to Wednesday. We are back again. It's like Groundhog Day. We haven't done nothing and still have not done nothing. Right? You like that English? We ain't did nothing. Yeah. It's kind of like that. We just haven't done anything. However, the marketplace is a living thing, and nothing in nature can be contained forever. The longer this stays contained, the more energy it is building up. Until eventually they will get to the point where it finally explodes. There is no promise or guarantee of a market direction. There is only an expectation that it is building up energy, and that sooner or later it is going to give away that energy. Now, the dollar from last week to this week also has made some very exaggerated moves, but we're right back where we started. Literally, it's like the whole week, nothing happened. At the end of it all, we're right back where we started. Hamster on the wheel, right? Did a whole lot of work and got a whole lot of nothing for it. This is what keeps people up at night. So we're going to be keeping our eye on this. We don't want to see another exaggerated move like that. We got our lines in the sand, very clearly defined what we do not want to see. We want to maintain this ratio at least until the FOMC announcement. If we start to see exaggerated moves in here, be aware it's going to rock through the NASDAQ, right? Not quite sure what it's going to do in the Russell. That thing's been a wild card lately. I wouldn't even try to presume to know how this is going to affect the Russell at this point, right? Because it's not a constant. It's not a steady. All right, we're looking at the S&P 500 filtered down to 100 names. Pre-market change percent. Going to change the color scheme just a little bit, kind of tighten it up so it'll be more responsive sooner. So you can see that the color change starts if it's positive or negative instead of waiting for it to get to a certain percentage point. We got a mixed bag of goods today. When I was looking at the S&P 100 and the names that were down the most, there was a lot of energy names. There was some transportation in there too. But you can see ExxonMobil and Chevron, two of the biggest names in energy, are both down considerably. Energy and finance has been tied together a lot. Finance isn't down very much yet this morning compared to these guys. But keep your eye on these, right? And then we got Lowe's and Home Depot. Again, big names in the industry. Lowe's is down significantly, but Home Depot's feeling it. Chip names, mixed bag of goods. A little bit of good, a little bit of bad in the chip names. NVIDIA, just wow, right? And then the other side of that, Texas Instruments, down considerably. So we're looking at the S&P 100 here in the watch list, sorted by the extended hours. Energy, healthcare. So keep your eye on those energy names. Coke and Pepsi were doing good yesterday. It seems like they're giving it back. If we look at what's doing good this morning, NVIDIA, Qualcomm, Adobe, some of those bigger names, Google and Microsoft. Oh, excuse me. Those are, I got to get that out of there. I keep looking at those. That's better. So up 1%, that's not bad. We start getting into 1/4% or 1/10%. I'm not overly excited about that. You may as well just call it flat, right? So we swap over to the next name on the list. We're looking at the NASDAQ 100. Normally it actually says the NASDAQ 100. This morning it does not. It says US 100. Now that threw me off and I went looking. They did like a name change. So it's US 100, but it's the NASDAQ, right? If you were to go over to something like the screeners page and check markets, so we go to indexes, you can see world indexes. It's got S&P and then US 100. If you go to US indices, S&P 500, US 100. So when I was looking at that, if you actually click on it, it does say NASDAQ, right? So I don't know. Name change just kind of threw me off. So it's the NASDAQ 100, pre-market change percent, no filter needed. We will change the color scheme, just kind of make things pop a little bit. It's easier to spot with the colors. Microsoft and Google, I mean, they're basically flat. Same with Apple, same with Amazon. So those are the big dogs right there, right? That half the FANG names right there. And they're basically flat. Then you got NVIDIA and Tesla, some more FANG names. Yeah, NVIDIA is up this morning, but Tesla, it's 1/4%. It's a whole lot of nothing. Not feeling the love there. China names, however, JD, Lulu, right? I think Baba's in there somewhere, doing pretty good. We can change this, right? Sort them by change percent. Extended hours measurement. What's doing good this morning? How many names are up at least, say 0.5%? Not very many names, and they're kind of all over the place. There's Baidu, NVIDIA, JD, T-Mobile, right? It's not looking that hot over here. A lot of these names are less than 1/4%. That just really doesn't get my excitement. Now you flip this thing over, though, and look at what's down this morning. Electronic Arts, Activision, right? Starbucks, Netflix. Although down 1/4% or down 1/10%, again, doesn't really light me up. All right, U.S. all companies. I added this morning when they threw me off on that NASDAQ name. I thought, well, what if we just looked at everything out there and then we ran a filter by market cap and narrowed it down to the top names in all of the names out there. And that's what I ended up with here. And then I gave it a color change with the sorting feature. It is pre-market change percent. And that's a really good view of the overall market, not giving a damn if it's in the NASDAQ or the S&P, but just in general, the names that are out there. Transportation shows up very nicely here. So does non-energy minerals. I like how it broke those apart really nice like that. Communication names. I just like this breakdown. This just looks really good. It's easy to get a grasp of what's moving out there in what sector. And then we can kind of chase it down the rabbit hole into subsectors, industries, and sub-industries. Looking at the sectors that have moved around this morning in the pre-market, we got the China ETF up 0.25%. Interest rates, or excuse me, the 20-year bond is up this morning. XLY, consumer discretionary, and energy is trying to come up a little bit, right? XOP. Now, XOP is a different energy than XLE, right? Those are two different names. XLE is way down here. This is the entire energy select sector, and XOP is more about gas exploration and production, right? Oil and gas exploration and production. Two different sides of energy. EEM is something that I use all the time to gauge the level of risk on in the market. How bullish is the marketplace? Not very bullish because we're sitting very close to flat this morning. Considering where we were yesterday, this is a healthy improvement. Looking at the overseas, a lot of the overseas markets are down or closed down in the overnight. All right, S&P, how many names are down 0.5%, less than 10? How many in the NASDAQ? Not even 5. Take it the other direction, how many are up at least 0.5% in the NASDAQ? 10 names, 10% of the NASDAQ is up 0.5. And the S&P 7. So it's not really bullish out there, right? This watch list is looking at every single company out there. If it has weekly options, it's in the list. When this list is at least 1/3 or greater, up more than 1%, that's bullish. That gets my attention. But we already know today is going to be a very sideways day. Not everything is going to be sideways, but anything in the sectors are going to be sideways. All your big names, any name that is going to be in the sectors, that's going to be a name that is most likely going to be sideways. Right? So you're going to have to fire up your stock picking scanners. You're going to have to go in and individually target your names today. It may be a capital rotation name day. So rather than focusing on the FANG names and the big tech, I would focus on retail, maybe airlines, cruise lines, those lower mom and pop names that really make up the backbone of the marketplace, but that we really just don't see enough of. So pot names. Kind of a mixed bag of goods, but InBev is still pushing pretty decent this morning. The EV market, again, mixed bag of goods, a lot of bad with a little bit of good. NIO and Tesla kind of leading the way there. Li Auto is at least above the negative. However, like XPEV, GM, Ford, yeah, no, not doing too good. Crypto as well, mixed bag. Now, my crypto list is more based on like blockchain than crypto itself, right? Because when I made this list, we didn't necessarily have a crypto ETF or a crypto's futures the way that we could use TrendSpider for. All right, guys, that is your day. Be careful, be safe. I will be streaming in the Bullish Bears today. And this afternoon, hopefully, I will find an opportunity to come in and we will look for some swing trades after the report, if there is enough time left, right? Because if he prattles and rattles all the way up until 4 o'clock, we're not going to get any swing trades done. And it'll just have to be done tomorrow.